Hello, and this is David Clive Price, and you're so welcome today to the Asia Business Network Expert Series. Coming up today, we're going to talk about the thoughtful leader and how you can develop the leadership qualities to win in international markets, such as those of Asia. And we have an awesome guest in the experts chair today. It's Mindy Gibbons-Klein. Mindy is founder and director of Real Thought Leaders, the Book Midwife, and Panoma Press Business Publishing. She is a highly sought-after speaker to executive audiences. She also develops and presents workshops and training programs for top business leaders. She has spoken to thousands of people in many countries around the world. She is the author and co-author of 7 books, including bestseller 24 Karat Bold, the standard for real thought leaders, and she has just published a new book, The Thoughtful Leader: How to Use Your Head and Your Heart to Inspire Others. So we're thrilled to have her here today. Mindy, welcome.
Thanks a lot, David. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. So let's start off with something that perhaps goes to the heart of your work, and that is, how do you define thought leadership?
Thought leadership, it wasn't a term a lot of people were using until about 5 or 6 years ago. And now I think people are catching on. How I define it is truly exciting and new and disruptive thinking. So we're talking about ideas that really shake things up in every industry and in every area of life and business. So, when something just turns your head and you think, wow, that's different. And we don't see so much of that these days because a lot of things sound same old, same old. So we're aiming to find those ideas, those disruptive, creative, exciting new things that will open things up for, as I say, people in their life and business.
And do you think that thought leadership sometimes seems a bit devalued by the fact that many people claim to be thought leaders or have thought leadership thrust upon them?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you're saying that it's really original and disruptive, innovative ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you see thought leadership spreading out, as it were, and being devalued in the sense that people claim it when they're not really thought leaders as such?
Well, firstly, I don't believe anybody should call himself or herself a thought leader.
Right,
That's for the market to decide, and I've
right.
said that for many years. The sad thing is when people talk about articles and blogs and content and call that thought leadership. So they call every article and blog and content thought leadership. Well, how can it be? It's an article, or it's a piece of writing, and that does devalue it. And then people get a bit cynical about it. So first rule is never call yourself one.
Right.
Second rule is really be discerning in terms of what you read, but especially what you write and what you say, and plan your content so that it does offer something new, and aim to be a thought leader, even though you're never going to call yourself one.
Right. And what do you think then are the best ways to become a thought leader, especially in a cross-cultural context, as many of my
Mm-hmm.
listeners will be involved in a cross-cultural context?
Yes, well, this is a concept that first was presented in 24 Karat Bold, my other book, and it has 3 components, real thought leadership. So the first is having the idea, this really innovative idea, and that's a subjective thing, but it's having a really great creative new thought or angle on something. Then you have to have the courage to share that. And that's where a lot of people fall down. They think, oh, I don't know, is it interesting enough? Is it original enough?
Right.
And they hold back. And especially some cultures, it's really not the done thing to be putting yourself out there all the time and saying, I have a great new idea. It's encouraged, people are encouraged to be more subtle and maybe more reserved. including in the UK, I'm talking about compared to the US where I grew up. So having that courage to share is a big thing for many people. They don't they don't know how, or they are afraid. And then finally, the third component, and this is the bit that you can't really control, this is where you are recognized for those ideas. And you begin to be talked about, written about. If you are talking about social media, your ideas are shared and reposted and retweeted and all that sort of thing. But I say you can't control it. You can influence it by really working on your idea and finding the best ways to share it, because it depends who you're trying to influence. But there's so many different media nowadays. Picking the right ones, doing it at the right intervals, so not too often, but enough. And so there's lots and lots of components to it, which is why I find it really exciting work.
And I guess having really good and exciting ideas is also one of the main necessities for becoming a thought leader. As you say, it's something that, as it were, comes to you by a lot of hard work and by a gradual process of getting your original thoughts and exciting ideas out into the world. But as you
Yeah.
say, I also think that perhaps in cultures like those in Asia, it's not so easy to become a thought leader because individualism as such is not encouraged to the extent that we like to to put ourselves out there more in Anglo-Saxon countries.
I agree with you
Mm,
100%. And that's what I was talking about, where it may not be encouraged in society or in the organization in which you work. Um, and as such, you might not have learned those skills. So somebody living in a culture where it's not the done thing, they may not even know where to start, and they may not trust their own ideas and individualism, and they may not want to stick their head above the parapet, as we say here. They may not want to have the spotlight on them. So it's a choice. Thought leadership is definitely a choice. What I'm aiming to do is help people explore the options, understand what's possible, understand how to do it if they choose to become known and want to raise their profile, which is really what we're talking about.
yes.
To understand how to do it better and more quickly, I guess.
Well, your new book is called The Thoughtful Leader. And
Yes.
tell me, is thoughtful leadership different from thought leadership?
Well, I enjoy writing and speaking about thought leadership, but as you rightly said, David, so many people abuse the term. It's become overused, it's misunderstood, and thoughtful leadership is related to thought leadership. What it really means is putting real thought into your thought leadership, and that means thinking deeper, spending more time planning and crafting messages, really digging deep to figure out what it is that you have to say, what it is you believe about key topics and key issues in your industry or in your world, and how you're going to share them, and thinking about the other people that you interact
Ah,
with.
yes.
So it's a lot of thought going in. And so what I'm aiming to do with this new work is help people develop those great ideas and come up with better ideas, ones that have had more thought put into them. It sounds quite simple, but like most simple things, people don't always do them. And they may not realize that things have moved on, times have changed, and you can't just slap an article together and put it online and think that it's going to get lots of attention unless you put the proper thought into it.
Yes, I think in some ways, thought by itself, or in the intellectual part of ourselves, is not enough to succeed in the modern world, especially of business. I see that your subtitle is How to Use Your Head and Your Heart to Inspire Others.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps it's that part of thoughtfulness that is so important to leaders these days. Particularly, I'm thinking again of uh, doing business in international markets, overseas, in other cultures, the thoughtfulness is required for placing yourself in the shoes of others, placing yourselves in the hearts of others, being able to understand how they think and what they believe in, what they feel on a daily basis, which may be rather different from the cultural background that we've grown up in. So,
Yeah,
so there's
that's it.
yes. I wonder if you'd like to say a bit more about that thoughtfulness aspect of what you call bearing, sharing, and daring to care in your book.
Yes, there's a lot of rhyming words, but I had fun anyway.
Yeah, it,
I think that's the place where people need to get to next. You're absolutely right. Just putting the intellectual thought into something it doesn't always cut it. It's not always enough. And thinking about others, it's something that we think we understand how to do, but in a competitive world, in a stressful situation, it's the thing that we don't always do. And I'm speaking about myself as well. I had to reflect quite deeply putting the book together and thinking, I'm not perfect in any of these areas, but where I've had success, especially recently, is where I've just taken a step back. And as you said, thinking about the other person, there are two meanings of the word thoughtful.
yes.
English may be the only language where the word thoughtful can have two very diverse meanings, putting thought in as well as caring. Um, it's special. If you can manage to do both, you will have such an edge over other people, and you will be able to achieve a lot more in your relationships and in business. And that's exciting because I think it's become very competitive in the business world, and it's not so much fun when you feel you're just fighting and stressed out all the time. So I really hope that good people can achieve more success with this.
Yes, I think emotional intelligence is becoming more important on the corporate agenda. More leaders are talking about their feelings, about their stories,
Mm.
relating to their teams and employees in different ways than simply on the usual top-down and logical, rational way. And this is the business, the decision-making process is like this, etc. So emotion, as you portray in the book, is such an important part now and a growing part of both business per se and, for example, business again expanding into new markets and new cultures, new ways of doing things. What do you think are the mistakes? Tell me what kind of mistakes you see leaders making on a regular basis
In this area,
in this area.
yes. Well, I mentioned one before, but it's worth bringing up again, and that is where someone, a business owner or business leader, thinks or is told that it's good to put blogs and articles and out into the market and to be active on social media, but without the thought. Sounds crazy, because we can all write articles about all sorts of things. In fact, I have one due tomorrow.
Right.
Um, and yet, if you put things out that don't add anything new or different, then you're really wasting people's time. And, that's a sin these
Yes,
days.
yes.
So I think leaders should think, twice, three times and more before they write articles and publish them. Or I say articles, could be, a book. Can you imagine, David,
Yeah.
having written books yourself, if, putting a book out that hasn't been thought through well enough, and now it's out there in print, and somebody isn't getting any value. So that's one thing, is putting out value-less content. I think the more worrying mistake that I see is top executives thinking that they don't need to do these things, that because they have a marketing department, and the bigger the company, the bigger the marketing department, and they think that they can delegate all of this, including the thinking.
Yes,
So
yes.
what you end up with is junior level thinking. And, look, let's face it, I was a junior marketing person before I became a senior marketing leader and everything else. it's great. They love it. They love feeling empowered, but you can't really delegate your thinking. And I say this very often, but this is a huge mistake that I see executives and business leaders making, where they think that they can outsource or just let someone more junior put things together, and it's not delegation in it's abdication.
So
Now,
you're
it's a huge mistake.
so you're outsourcing your thought leadership without the thought.
Well, you can't. I mean, they think they can, but it doesn't work, is what I'm saying. You can tell, when you read some generic article or blog or press release, and you think this isn't even saying anything. It's not saying anything new. And as I say, it is rather a sin to waste people's time. There is another. It's not a mistake that people make because they don't know any better, but they think that they have to be some amazing writer or speaker to put their thoughts down in writing or get on a stage or in front of a video camera. And it's not true because we like real people.
Yes.
And this goes across all cultures.
Yeah.
We really enjoy getting to know people at a personal level. And we love it when people are authentic. But that's exactly the thing that I find leaders are afraid of. So the more senior they are, there's a sort of trend, or not a trend, but something that happens where they just think, oh, they can't let people down, and they have to be so amazing, and they get themselves so fearful
Mm.
that they won't actually write anything, or they get very nervous before doing public speaking. Whereas if they would just relax and be themselves, it's counterintuitive, but they'd be more successful.
Yes, and that probably is reflected in their thoughtful pieces because and in their talks and in the way they present them. So if we want to know the authentic leader, we want to know the real person. We don't really want mass-produced corporate type articles and blogs, etc.,
Mm.
because they're the thing to do, the right thing to do. We much more want to find out the real person behind our leaders and who they are and how they can inspire us.
Yes, well, that the leaders who do tend to inspire us are the ones that we get to know, and we
Yes.
we find out about not just their successes, but where they've stumbled or had a failure, and we just think, oh, that they're not perfect after all, and it makes us like them even more, and then that in turn makes us like their brand and their company. So that's how it works, but people are very afraid to do it.
Well, turning this conversation a little bit more on the personal, back to you. If you
Mm.
had no need to work for money, what would you do?
Oh, a lot of things. But the thing that I really like doing is hosting people. You were at a recent book launch of mine, and I just love having people and having them, come and celebrate and have a drink and have some food. I would probably run a bed and breakfast, a hotel, a retreat center, or a whole resort if I could. It depends how much money I had. But that's where things are heading because, I really love running my events and my parties, both business and personal. And I would just do that all the time. I do as much as I can now anyway. But I would continue to do that because it's all about people getting together and celebrating. And I do make a big point about this in the new book. I think, life is short, no matter what continent you live on. You really do need to enjoy, everything that happens and enjoy your life as much as possible, because otherwise, what's the point? So I would have to stay in that kind of industry, helping people enjoy life.
Well, that is very much you, Mindy. I can say that for knowing you for a few years now, a very people-centered person. And Mindy, this has been a really great conversation, and I appreciate the time you've taken to do this. But just before I let you go, I have just one final question. What do you
Uh-huh.
think is the most important quality for a real thoughtful leader to have to achieve success? Just in a nutshell.
I can give it to you in one word, which I
Great.
think I summed it up in the book. Intention. Oh,
Ah.
2 words, positive intention.
Hmm.
So having a positive intention to achieve this, to give more to society, to give of yourself, to get to know people, it all starts with the intention. And people, all they need to do is take a step back and reflect and think, would I like to be more thoughtful? And if the answer is yes, then they've already taken the first step. And I find that very exciting.
Positive intention. I'm sure that's
Yes.
a really important tip that listeners will want to think about and develop for themselves. So that's it for today. I'd like to thank Mindy for being my guest. Thank you so much, Mindy.
Thank you, David.
And if you'd like to know more, please visit Mindy's website at www.thethoughtfulleader.com, thethoughtfulleader.com, which is also there at the links below. And listen in to more news and views on doing business in Asia at Asia Business Network Expert Series, to which you can also subscribe on iTunes. So until the next time, happy listening.